Imagine a room so heavy with dread that the air itself feels like it's suffocating you. It's January 27th, 1547, and in the flickering shadows of Whitehall Palace, a king lies dying, a grotesque monument to power, rotting from within. His name is Henry VIII, England's lion, now reduced to a trembling, bloated shell, his body a battlefield of oozing sores and shattered pro. You weren't meant to know this story, not like this. The history books sanitize it, painting him as a towering tyrant or a tragic hero. But the truth is darker, more dangerous, and it's been buried for centuries beneath layers of royal propaganda and whispered fears. Tonight, I'm pulling you into the forbidden, into the final 24 hours of a man who reshaped a nation with blood and ambition, only to be betrayed by his flesh. This is no mere history lesson. This is a descent into the hidden forces that control kings, courts, and the minds of men. Are you ready to see what they didn't want you to know? Let's start with the scene. Picture it. A cavernous chamber, draped in black velvet, the air thick with the sickly sweet stench of decay. Incense burns furiously, but it can't mask the rot. In the centre, sprawled across a bed so massive it could hold 4 men, lies Henry, 400 pounds of diseased flesh, his legs wrapped in bandages that weep pus and blood. The ulcers eating his bones are so vile that courtiers, hardened men who've seen battlefields, gag as they approach. His face, once the envy of Europe's princes, is now a jaundiced mask, eyes sunken like graves, staring into a void only he can see. Mechanical cranes groan under his weight, lifting him like cargo when he needs to move. This is no kingly dignity. This is a man unravelling, his body a mirror of the chaos he's sown for decades. And yet, even as death claws at him, his mind, sharp, paranoid, ruthless, clings to power with a grip that could crush stone. You've been told Henry was a monster, a tyrant who beheaded wives and burned heretics. But that's only half the story. The real truth, the one they buried, is that Henry wasn't just a man. He was a system, a living engine of control, built to bend a nation to his will. His reign wasn't just about power, it was about rewriting reality itself. He broke England from Rome, declared himself a god's voice on earth, and reshaped faith, law, and loyalty to serve his But in these final hours, that system is collapsing. His body betrays him, his court schemes behind his back, and the ghosts of his past, wives, rivals, even his conscience, haunt the edges of his fevered mind. This is where the myth of Henry VIII cracks open, revealing the forbidden truth. Even the most powerful men are puppets to forces they can't control. Let's go deeper. Henry's decline didn't start yesterday. It began decades ago when the Golden Prince, athletic, charming, the Renaissance ideal, began to fracture under the weight of his ambition. A jousting accident in 1536 crushed his leg, leaving wounds that never healed. Modern doctors suspect type 2 diabetes, gout, and osteomyelitis, a bone infection that turned his legs into festering ruins. By 1547, these ailments had twisted him into something grotesque. His temper, once fiery, became a storm of rage and paranoia. He'd scream for hours, then fall into dazed silences, muttering about enemies long dead. Courtiers whispered of madness. They dared not say it aloud. Why? Because Henry's power wasn't just in his crown. It was in his ability to make men fear their thoughts. He'd executed thousands, from nobles to peasants, for daring to question him. Even now, as he gasped for breath, his signature on a death warrant could end a life. But here's the secret they didn't want you to know. Henry's control was never just about fear. It was about belief. He made England believe he was untouchable, divine, the hand of God. His propaganda, paintings, proclamations, even the way he stood in portraits, was a psychological machine designed to burn his image into the minds of millions. That broad-shouldered, defiant stance you know from Holbein's paintings? A lie. By 1547, he couldn't stand without help. Yet the myth held firm because Henry understood something primal. Control the story, and you control the world. His court, his church, his nation, they all bent to his narrative. But now, as his body fails, that narrative is unravelling, and the men around him are already rewriting the future. Look at the room again. The candles flicker, casting shadows that seem to move with intent. His physicians, desperate to save their necks, apply poultices of boiled onions and powdered skull. Useless relics of medicine as broken as their king. Opium clouds his mind, dulling the pain but amplifying his terrors. He sees faces in the dark. Anne Boleyn, her neck severed. Thomas More, his eyes accusing. Jane Seymour, the only wife he didn't destroy, staring in silent judgment. These aren't just nightmares, they're the cracks in his psyche. The truth he's suppressed for years. Power built on blood always comes at a cost. And now, as his heart stutters and his lungs labour, that cost is being paid. The court around him is a nest of vipers. The Duke of Norfolk, a cunning survivor, faces a death sentence that Henry signed in his final lucid moments. Edward Seymour, uncle to the boy King Edward VI, is already plotting to seize control. Thomas Cranmer, the Archbishop, guards the door, ensuring no one speaks of the king's condition. Why the secrecy? Because the truth is a weapon. If word leaks that Henry is dying, foreign powers, France, Spain, the Pope, could strike. The nation could fracture. The court knows this, and they're playing a deadly game balancing loyalty to a dying king against ambition for the throne to come. This is the hidden agenda. Power never sleeps, even when a king does. You're starting to see it, aren't you? The layers of control, the lies are woven into history itself. Henry wasn't just a man, he was a myth, a machine, a god king who reshaped reality. But in these final hours, the machine is breaking, the myth is crumbling, and the truth, the dangerous, forbidden truth, is that no man, no matter how powerful, can escape the forces he unleashes. You're not just watching history, you're witnessing the collapse of a system that's been controlling minds for centuries, and it's only the beginning. We're going deeper into the heart of this darkness. Are you with me? You're standing at the edge of a void now, staring into the abyss of a king's final hours. It's January 27th, 1547, and Henry VIII lies in his darkened chamber at Whitehall Palace, his massive frame trembling under the weight of his own decay. The air is thick with the stench of festering wounds, the flicker of candles casting grotesque shadows across walls that have witnessed too many secrets. You can feel it, can't you? The unease, the sense that you're uncovering something you were never meant to know. This isn't just the death of a man, it's the collapse of a myth, a system, a lie so powerful it held a nation in its grip for decades. Henry built an empire of fear and belief, but now, as his body betrays him, the truth is clawing its way out. Let's go deeper. Let's peel back the layers of his mind, his court, and the forces that shaped him, because what you're about to hear will change how you see power forever. Inside Henry's skull, a war is raging. The opium they've pumped into him dulls the agony of his rotting legs. But it's unleashed something worse, a storm of memories and terrors that no crown can shield him from. He sees them in the dark, the faces of those he destroyed. Anne Boleyn, her eyes burning with betrayal as the axe fell. Thomas More, his once trusted friend, staring in silent condemnation. Jane Seymour, the only wife he claims to have loved, her pale face a reminder of the son she died to give him. These aren't just ghosts, they're the fragments of a conscience he buried long ago. Henry, the man who declared himself God's voice, is now haunted by the blood on his hands. Court records whisper of his ramblings, moments of delirium where he calls out to wives long dead, begging forgiveness or cursing their names. In his lucid moments, he clings to his will, scribbling orders with a trembling hand, desperate to control England's future even as his own slips away. But here's the forbidden truth they didn't want you to know. Henry's torment wasn't just personal, it was engineered. His court, his physicians, his so-called loyal advisors, they've been shaping his mind for years, feeding his paranoia, stoking his rage, all to keep him pliable. The ulcers on his legs, the diabetes ravaging his body, the infections eating his bones, these weren't just accidents of fate. They were the cracks in a machine, a body pushed beyond its limits by a life of excess, and a mind warped by absolute power. His doctors, terrified of his wrath, hid the truth about his condition, lying to his face while whispering in corridors that the king was doomed. They applied useless remedies, poultices of human skull, concoctions of gold, knowing they'd fail but preserving their own necks. This is the first layer of the conspiracy. A king, betrayed by his own body, was also betrayed by those closest to him, who used his decline to tighten their grip on power. Look beyond the bedchamber, and the real game comes into focus. The court is a battlefield, and Henry's fading pulse is the signal for war. The Duke of Norfolk, a master of survival, sits in a cell, his death warrant signed by a king too weak to hold the pen steady. Norfolk's crime? ambition too naked, too threatening to the men who want to control the next king, 9-year-old Edward. Edward Seymour, the boy's uncle, is moving like a predator, securing allies, bribing guards, whispering promises of power. He knows Henry's death is hours away, and he's ready to seize the regency before the body is cold. Thomas Cranmer, the Archbishop, stands guard at the door not out of loyalty but to control the flow of information. Every word, every visitor is a chess move in a game where the prize is England itself. This isn't loyalty, it's manipulation, a hidden agenda to reshape the nation while the king still breathes. You're seeing it now, aren't you? The web of control that extends beyond Henry, beyond the palace, into the very soul of England. Henry didn't just rule, he created a system where fear was currency, where loyalty was a lie, and where power was the only god. But that system is fracturing. The myth of the invincible king is crumbling as his body fails, and the men around him are ready to carve up his legacy. They've been planning this for years, waiting for the lion to weaken. The Catholic faction, led by Norfolk, dreams of a return to Rome's embrace. The Protestants, with Seymour at the helm, see a chance to push England toward reform. Henry, caught between these forces, is no longer the master, he's the pawn. His final hours are staged for their ambitions. And yet, even now, Henry fights. In his lucid moments, he dictates his will, naming Edward, Mary, Elizabeth in a line of succession, meant to bind England to his blood. He creates a regency council, 16 men to govern collectively, a final act of paranoia to prevent anyone noble from seizing too much power. But he knows, deep down he knows, they'll betray him the moment he's gone. This is the tragedy of power. The man who controlled everything is now helpless, his empire of belief crumbling as his court schemes in the shadows. The propaganda that painted him as a god-king, those portraits, those proclamations, was a lie to control you, to control England, to control history itself. This is where you come in. You're not just watching this, you're part of it. The truth about Henry's final hours isn't just a story, it's a warning. Power, when built on lies, always collapses. Systems of control, whether in a palace or your own mind, thrive on your ignorance. Wake up, see the strings, and to seal this moment, to mark your place in this descent, I want you to comment below. The lion falls, the truth rises. Say it twice, let it sink into your bones. Because we're not done, we're going deeper into the final moments, the hidden rituals, and the secrets that will shake you to your core. Are you ready to keep falling? You're deeper now, standing in the shadows of a truth so raw it burns. It's the night of January 27th, 1547, and Henry VIII is no longer a king. He's a man, broken, gasping, teetering on the edge of eternity. The candles in Whitehall Palace flicker like ducking stars. Their light barely touching the massive bed where his diseased body lies, a grotesque relic of the power he once wielded. The stench of his rotting flesh fills the room, a reminder that even gods can decay. You're not supposed to be here witnessing this. The history they fed you was polished, sanitized, meant to keep you blind. But tonight, I'm tearing the veil away, showing you the forbidden, the rituals, the dread, the lies that held a nation captive as its king faced judgment. This isn't just Henry's story, it's the story of how power manipulates even the soul. Are you ready to see the strings they pulled, the truths they buried? The chamber is a tomb already, though Henry still breathes. His chest heaves, each gasp a battle against the sepsis poisoning his blood, the heart failure squeezing his life away. His physicians, faces pale with fear, hover like vultures, their hands trembling as they apply hot irons to his skin, a desperate ritual to shock his body back from the brink. The pain is excruciating, but Henry's screams are weaker now, muffled by opium and exhaustion. They force bitter concoctions down his throat, mixtures of herbs, gold dust, even pulverized gems, useless relics of a medical system as corrupt as the court itself. These men aren't healers, they're actors in a charade, preserving the illusion of control while the king slips away. They know failure means their heads, so they perform, not for Henry, but for the men who will rule after him. But it's not the physical pain that consumes Henry now, it's the spiritual terror. The man who declared himself head of the Church of England, who shattered Rome's grip to crown himself God's chosen, is unravelling under the weight of his own hubris. In his fevered mind, he's not just dying, he's facing judgment. Court records whisper of his nightmares, faces of the dead, Anne Boleyn, Thomas More, even his own mother, staring from the foot of his bed, their silence louder than any accusation. He wakes in panic, mumbling prayers, begging forgiveness one moment, then cursing his enemies the next. His personal chaplain, standing vigil, notes how Henry swings between Catholic rituals and Protestant defiance, as if he could bargain with God the way he bullied his court. This is the forbidden truth. The king who reshaped England's faith is now terrified of the eternity he created. Why does this matter? Because Henry's dread wasn't just personal, it was a tool. His court, his church, his advisors, they've spent years weaving a myth of divine authority, convincing England that Henry's will was God's will. But now, as he trembles before death, that myth is crumbling. The Archbishop Thomas Cranmer stands at his bedside, not as a shepherd, but as a gatekeeper. He controls who sees the king, what they hear, what they say. When Henry, too weak to speak, squeezes Cranmer's hand to affirm his faith in Christ, it's not a moment of salvation, it's a performance, staged to ensure the Protestant faction's grip on the future. This is the hidden agenda. Even a king's soul can be weaponized, turned into propaganda to control a nation's destiny. Outside the chamber, the conspiracy of silence tightens. The court knows Henry's death is imminent, but the truth is a powder keg. If word leaks, factions will fracture, foreign powers will pounce, and England could burn. Cranmer ensures only a handful of trusted men enter the room, each sworn to secrecy, their loyalty bought with fear or promises of power. Queen Catherine Parr, Henry's sixth wife, is kept at arm's length, her presence a risk to the delicate balance. The Privy Council, split between Catholics and Protestants, meets in secret, their whispers echoing through Whitehall's stone corridors. Edward Seymour, the boy king's uncle, is already moving pieces, securing fortresses, bribing nobles, preparing to crown himself Lord Protector the moment Henry's heart stops. This isn't chaos, it's calculation, a machine of ambition oiled with the king's blood. You're seeing it now, aren't you? The layers of manipulation, the way power feeds on silence. Henry's final hours aren't just a death, they're a transfer of control, a moment when the system he built is hijacked by those he trusted. The myth of the invincible king was always a lie, a psychological cage to keep England obedient. But as his body fails, the cage is breaking, and the truth is spilling out. Power is never owned, only borrowed. The men around Henry aren't mourning, they're plotting, using his death to reshape the future. And you, watching this, are part of that truth now. You're not just a spectator, you're a witness to the forbidden, to the moment when a king's myth collapses and the real forces of control reveal themselves. Halfway through this descent, I need you to anchor yourself. Comment below, "The lion falls, the truth rises." Say it twice, let it burn into your mind. This isn't just a phrase, it's the key, unlocking your awareness, binding you to the truth we're uncovering. Because we're not done. Henry's final moments are coming, and with them, secrets so dark they'll shake the foundation of everything you thought you knew. The rituals, the betrayals, the lies, they're all converging, and you're standing at the heart of it. This is dangerous knowledge, the kind that changes a man forever. Are you ready to fall further? Because the next truth is waiting, and it's sharper than any blade. You're in the heart of the abyss now, where the air is heavy with the stench of death and deceit. It's the early hours of January 28th, 1547, and Henry VIII, England's lion, is no longer a king. He's a ruin, his body a decaying monument to a power that once shook the world. The candles in Whitehall Palace burn low, their flickering light barely piercing the darkness that cloaks his massive bed. The room is a prison of rot, the smell so vile that attendants clutch perfumed cloths to their faces, their eyes watering as they move in silence. You weren't meant to see this, the grotesque truth of a king's end, the lies that held his empire together, the hands already reaching for his crown. This is forbidden knowledge, the kind that strips away illusions and leaves you changed. Tonight, we're tearing open the final moments of Henry's life, exposing the horror of his death and the betrayal that followed. Are you ready to face the darkness at the core? Henry's body is a battlefield, ravaged by a war he can't win. His legs, swollen and black with infection, ooze pus so foul it stains the air. Bone glints through necrotic flesh, a sight so horrific that even seasoned physicians recoil. His heart, engorged and failing, struggles to pump blood through a frame bloated to nearly 400 pounds. A massive stroke has paralysed his right side, his speech reduced to guttural moans. The royal bed, draped in black, groans under his weight as cranes lift him for the grim task of cleaning his wounds. Servants work in shifts, their faces pale, their hands trembling as they wipe away blood and decay. The ulcers are beyond treatment. Sepsis has taken hold, and death is no longer a question of if, but when. Yet even now Henry's eyes, sunken and yellow, burn with a flicker of defiance, as if he could command death itself to kneel. The physicians are out of tricks. They've burned his skin with hot irons, forced down potions of crushed gems and boiled herbs, even applied halved pigeons to his festering wounds, desperate, futile rituals to appease a dying god. Opium clouds his mind, dulling the pain but amplifying his terror. In his final lucid moments, he clutches at his will, a 30-page fortress of words meant to bind England to his bloodline. Edward, Mary, Elizabeth, a trinity of heirs to carry his name. But the truth, the one they buried, is that Henry's control was always an illusion. His body, his mind, his legacy, they're crumbling under the weight of a system he built but could never master. The man who beheaded wives and reshaped faith is now helpless, his power leaking away like the fluids from his wounds. And then it happens. Before dawn, Henry's breathing grows shallow, a rattling gasp that echoes in the silent chamber. Archbishop Cranmer, ever the gatekeeper, kneels at his side, urging him to squeeze his hand as a sign of faith. Henry, too weak to speak, grips with what strength remains, a final act staged for history, a lie to cement the Protestant narrative. Then silence. His chest stills. The king is dead. The room freezes, the air thick with the weight of what comes next. For 3 days, the Privy Council hides the truth, a conspiracy of silence so tight it could choke a nation. Why? Because Henry's death isn't just an end, it's a beginning. A moment when the machine of power shifts gears, and the men who served him become the men who rule. Edward Seymour moves like a shadow, his ambition unleashed the moment Henry's pulse fades. He secures key fortresses, bribes nobles, and positions himself as Lord Protector for the 9-year-old Edward VI. The Regency Council Henry so carefully designed, 16 men to balance power, is already unravelling, subverted by Seymour's ruthless efficiency. The Duke of Norfolk, sentenced to death by a dying king, escapes the axe only because Henry's death outpaces the executioner. This is the hidden agenda. The court wasn't mourning, it was manoeuvring, using the king's corpse as a stepping stone to power. The myth of Henry's invincibility, crafted through portraits and proclamations, is now a tool for others to wield, a mask to hide their betrayal. The physical reality of Henry's death is as grotesque as his life was grand. His body, too massive for a standard coffin, requires a lead-lined monstrosity, twice the width of a noble's casket. Embalmers work frantically, slicing open his corpse to remove organs, stuffing the cavities with herbs to slow the rot. But the decay is relentless. Gases build, splitting the coffin during the lying in state, leaking fluids onto the chapel floor. Servants whisper of dogs licking the seepage, a final indignity for a king obsessed with majesty. This wasn't just a body, it was a symbol, a warning that even the mightiest fall to the forces they unleash. The funeral procession to Windsor, draped in black, is a lie, presenting Henry as the god-king he hadn't been in years. You're seeing it now, aren't you? The truth they buried under pomp and ceremony. Henry's death wasn't just the end of a man, it was the exposure of a system built on lies, fear and control. His court, his church, his nation, they were all cogs in a machine that outlived him, repurposed by men who saw his death as opportunity. You're not just watching history, you're uncovering the blueprint of power itself, the way it manipulates, betrays and endures. Comment below, the lion falls, the truth rises. Say it twice, let it carve itself into your mind, because we're not done. One final truth awaits, sharper, darker and more dangerous than anything you've heard. The legacy of Henry's death, the forces it unleashed, they're still here, controlling you in ways you haven't seen yet. Are you ready for the last descent? You've reached the bottom of the abyss, where the shadows are thick and the truth cuts like a blade. It's January 28th, 1547, and Henry VIII is gone, his massive broken body lying cold in Whitehall Palace. The king who bent a nation to his will, who shattered Rome's chains and crowned himself God's voice, is now a corpse, his legacy a fragile thread in the hands of traitors. The air still hums with the stench of his decay, but the real rot is in the system he built, a machine of fear, lies, and control that outlives him, reshaping England and the world in ways you were never meant to understand. You've followed me this far, down a rabbit hole of forbidden history, and now the final truth awaits. Henry's death wasn't just an end, it was a spark, igniting forces that still manipulate you today. This is dangerous knowledge, the kind that rewrites who you are. Are you ready to see the world with new eyes? The bells of London toll on January 31st, 3 days after Henry's death, when the Privy Council finally admits their king is gone. For 72 hours, they hid the truth, a conspiracy so tight it silenced an empire. Edward Seymour, now Lord Protector, moved like a wolf, securing power before the corpse was cold. Fortresses locked, rivals sidelined, the boy King Edward VI, a frail 9-year-old, propped up as a puppet for Seymour's ambition. Henry's carefully crafted Regency Council, meant to balance power, is dead before it begins, betrayed by the same men he trusted. This is the first truth they buried. Power doesn't die with a king, it shifts, adapts, and feeds on the chaos of transition. The myth of Henry's invincibility, built through portraits and proclamations, is now a weapon in new hands, used to crown a child with the shadow of his father's terror. But the legacy runs deeper, darker. Henry's death wasn't just a political shift, it was a psychological earthquake. For nearly 4 decades, he was England's pulse, his whims shaping laws, faiths, and lives. Parish records from 1547 whisper of panic, prophetic dreams, strange omens, villagers claiming to see Henry's ghost in the winter fog. To a nation steeped in superstition, his death felt apocalyptic, a crack in the divine order he'd claimed to embody. The propaganda that painted him as God's chosen, those wide-shouldered portraits, that defiant stare, was so potent that even in death he haunted England's soul. But here's the forbidden truth: that fear, that awe was engineered. Henry didn't just rule, he reprogrammed a nation's mind, and his death left a void that others rushed to fill with new lies. The religious fallout is where the strings of control tighten. Henry broke with Rome, declared himself head of the church, and reshaped faith to serve his desires. But in his final hours, torn between Catholic rituals and Protestant defiance, he left a fractured legacy. Edward Seymour and Archbishop Cranmer seized this ambiguity, pushing England toward radical Protestantism with the Book of Common Prayer just 2 years later. Catholics, sidelined, cling to Henry's defense of old rituals, while Protestants claim his rejection of the Pope. This isn't just theology, it's a battle for the mind of a nation, a psychological war that turned churches into battlegrounds. The religious swings under Edward, Mary, and Elizabeth, all born from Henry's death, are proof of a system designed to keep people divided, obedient, and afraid. And then there's the physical legacy, a grotesque mirror of Henry's myth. His coffin, splitting under the pressure of his decaying body, leaks fluids onto the chapel floor, a final insult to a king obsessed with majesty. At Windsor, he's buried beside Jane Seymour, the wife who gave him a son and escaped his wrath by dying young. But even this is a lie, a staged tableau to preserve the image of a noble king. The embalmer's reports, hidden for centuries, reveal a liver blackened, a heart swollen, organs ravaged by diabetes and infection. This wasn't just a body, it was a warning. Power built on excess consumes itself. Yet the myth endures, Holbein's portraits immortalizing a Henry who never existed by 1547, a god king untouched by the rot that killed him. Now, look closer. This isn't just history, it's a blueprint. The systems Henry built, fear, propaganda, division, are still alive, shaping the world you live in. Governments, institutions, even the stories you're told, they're all echoes of the same machine designed to keep you blind, loyal, and controlled. Henry's court hid his death to secure power. Today, truths are buried for the same reason. His propaganda crafted a myth of invincibility. Modern systems do the same, selling you heroes and villains to keep you in line. His religious wars divided a nation. Today's battles, political, cultural, are the same game, pitting you against your neighbour to distract from the hands pulling the strings. You're not just learning about Henry, you're waking up to the forces that still bind you. This is why you're here, why you followed this descent. You're not just a man seeking secrets, you're a warrior for truth, breaking free from the lies that chain you. Comment below. The lion falls, the truth rises. Say it twice, let it become your mantra, a vow to see through the illusions, because the knowledge you've gained isn't just dangerous, it's power. Henry's death exposed the fragility of control, the way systems built on fear collapse under their own weight. You carry that truth now, a spark that can burn through the myths holding you back. Use it. Question everything. See the strings? The world hasn't changed as much as you think. Kings may be gone, but the game of power endures. We've walked through the darkness together, from Henry's rotting chamber to the forces that outlived him. You've seen the forbidden, a king betrayed by his body, his court, his legacy. You've seen the lies that held England captive, the systems that still hold you. This is the end of the descent, but the beginning of something else, an awakening. Take this knowledge, this fire, and carry it forward. The lion has fallen, but the truth rises, and you, standing in its light, are no longer the same man you were. What will you do with this power? The choice is yours, but the world is watching.